Oh my God, this is like high school now. Hi everyone, we've welcomed a new mentor on the Smart Green Card course today, Ramakrishnan. We've been friends for quite some time now, but this is when we really thought we can bring her EB1A expertise, all the things that she has done in her journey, also into the course to into the whole Smart Green Card program to improve the value of what we teach and help people be successful. And so, want to extend a warm welcome to you, to the course.
Hey, thanks so much, Simon, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Yep. Before we sort of dive into a lot of details here, right, like I kind of want to understand in general, all of us have our own motivations to go the EB1A route, right? Like for me, for example, in my case, I didn't get the H1B, right? It was a hell of a tough time for me, and I started looking at other options, and that's where I found out the O1A as an alternate to the EB1, the H1B, and then rabbit holed into that path, and then there was the EB1A that was like the obvious destination. However, in your case, it's slightly different, the motivations, right? Can you walk us through like your motivations of pursuing the EB1A?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to preface by saying it's really unfortunate that the immigration system is really unfavorable for people born in India and China. And I think it generally, like the way these processes have been set up are just very cumbersome and really hard for it's very luck based and not so merit based and things like that. So for me, like I think one of the things is I moved here in 2009. I've basically been here my whole undergraduate and graduate school career, and also built my professional career here in the US. And while I was thankfully I was lucky in the H1B process to have gotten the H1B visa and gone through the lottery and stuff. I was foolish in thinking the buck stopped there, and basically my immigration path would be secure from that point on. And boy, it was only when I think one of the companies I worked at started on the EB2 process that I realized, oh boy, this is God knows how many years of wait, and it was super unfavorable for anyone born in India and China. And so personally for me, there was one very specific event that kind of motivated me to really think about think hard about what is my way out here, and how do I ultimately get a green card and establish permanent residency. So it was actually right in the beginning of 2020. I had actually just had my daughter, and I returned back from maternity leave, and only to realize that my entire team was actually going to get scrapped in a matter of 3 months, and we were all essentially given a deadline to either find other roles within the company or look for other opportunities, because there was an impending layoff essentially. And so for me, that was a real wake-up call where I just truly realized how closely knit my job was with my security in the country. And while of course I was blessed to have a husband to latch on with a H4 and things like that, I truly wanted to chart my own path, and I just didn't want it to be the case that because of my job I'd have to leave the country and potentially bring my daughter with me and things like that. So that's when I really sat down to explore what options I had available. And I had a couple of friends who had considered the O1 path, and I was definitely aware of it, but never really occurred to me that I could essentially tackle that challenge, being someone who was working in a corporate job, not being an entrepreneur or not being a PhD and things like that. So I think for me, it was specifically that event, and also just realizing that the EB2 queue was just infinite, and there was no end to, there was no green card in sight in that process.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point about PhDs and Nobel Prizes and entrepreneurs and things like that, right? So I think there's this huge misnomer around there. Maybe it is because most people who got the EB1s, they kind of got it through the EB1B, which is an outstanding researcher, and then that sort of spread as a myth that only you need to have a PhD to get it, whereas there's this whole new or whole different EB1A path that you can self-petition and then go ahead with. A lot of people, I get multiple messages a day asking the same question. I don't have a PhD. like, do I still qualify, right? Like, so
Right,
the answer
right.
is, yeah, that's part of the reason I also started the course, last year to begin with, is like, hey, like, I don't have a PhD.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and most people I know who got the EB1A don't. So, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was definitely an eye opener for me as well. And partly also why I think a lot of the early process of like even being self-aware and fully understanding if I can qualify for the EB1 was like really hard, because unfortunately there were not other people who had achieved the EB1A in non-traditional paths. Like not that many of those people actually talked about it or like put themselves out there. And so I think I felt very alone in like actually going through this process myself, because I was always in doubt and like always thinking about, oh, I don't meet the traditional criteria for someone going down this path. So like, can I actually do it? Right. So I'm sure like you probably have encountered that with people who you've encountered in the course and things like that.
Yeah. So the thing is, when I actually embarked on this journey, right, I started looking for resources, maybe people who have done this, or like resources at large on like how this can be done and things like that. I mean, there were like a super high level resources like, okay, yeah, you need to meet 3 out of 10 criteria.
Right.
Like,
right.
I don't need like someone to tell me that.
Yeah.
USAIS tells me that. And it was really hard to figure out tactically, right? Like,
Right.
and a lot of things that seem obvious that these should obviously work, they don't work, right? And they end up wasting a lot of your time. And I went through like probably several months of time wastage because there were all these like seemingly obvious things that I ended up doing, which didn't amount to anything. And part of my motivation to like start the course also was that, hey, there's no single repository, and this is a huge problem that people face, right? Like, there's no single actionable place that people can go to. And this was like an honest sort of outlet of, okay, yeah, this worked for me, let's abstract it a little bit, and then like let's help more people, which we've been seeing success with. But I'm kind of curious to know like what motivated you to become like a mentor in this process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as I mentioned earlier, like I was definitely very lonely in this process. And, I think personally for me, one of the things that helped me was doing a lot of my own research and like referencing, like really crawling the web and trying to find like any source that I could leverage to think about, building evidence for any of the categories and things like that. And I think the other thing was, while I did work with a lawyer, like it was not very helpful in many aspects, one of which was, they didn't have a lot of context into the field of work that I was in or the industry that I was in. And so they were not able to really give me any tailored advice as to how I can best leverage my experiences for the categories. And also, like, generally, I think lawyers, too, unfortunately, are not very receptive to taking on clients who don't fit the traditional paths of EB1A and B, right? Like, I think a couple of lawyers I approached, like, right off the bat, they're like, oh, do you have citations or do you have, like, patents? Like, tell us more about that. And if you don't, like, we're not going to consider you, right? And so it almost felt like, is there even a way? Because one of the things that actually stood out to me about the EB1A is you can self-petition. You don't actually need a job. You don't need to have, labor certification and things like that. And so I'm like, well, it sounds like you can self-petition, but how do I even go about it? Because I don't have, as you said, like there was no single repository of like tools and resources that I could leverage, right? And interestingly, actually, when I was starting to consider the EB1A process, I don't know if it was because like I wrote about my frustration on LinkedIn or something, that one of the posts that you had shared on immigration popped up, and that's when I came to know that, oh, okay, well, there's someone out there who at least doesn't have a PhD or an Oscar award or any of, does not meet any of the traditional bills for like EB1A profiles, and he's, been able to get an EB1A. And so I was actually very inspired by your story. And I also actually signed up for your course briefly, but I think I had already gotten my approval by then. And so I fully advocate for having more resources like what you're offering. And I think what you've done with the program is really very helpful for people who are exploring this path, to have everything kind of in a central point, both in terms of the resources and also the access to mentors like you and I, right? To really help solidify a really good petition for the EB1A. And so I think I'm a huge advocate for what you're doing here with the Smart Green Card course.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very humbling to hear, and yeah, the kind of successes we are seeing from people that go through the program. I think that's like even more promising to keep pushing, right? So one thing I want to touch on is the EB1A in general. It of course, like, it has secured our immigration paths in the country. That's one. But then going through this whole journey of profile building and all of these things, there is a certain aspect or a sort of a trailing effect it has on us as people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not just about like, hey, okay, you do a bunch of work and then you get the visa or the green card and then you do nothing, right? Like, and you can't even approach it at all with that mentality, because it'll leave that sort of motivated sort of aspect in you to keep pushing for more, like even after you sort of cross the hurdle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think honestly, the EB1A, like just securing the EB1A has not just helped me from an immigration point of view, but like has helped obviously increase my self-confidence. Like I feel like, oh, this seemed like something that was unachievable, and like having come on the other side, I'm like, well, clearly like I should be leveraging this expertise and continuing to build on all the great work that I had done to get to this point. And honestly, like for me, the one thing that I didn't mention before was also, I didn't want to be constrained by just a 9-to-5 job. And I think that was one thing that truly helped me earlier on. Like I was trying to do the best that I could outside my job, whether it was through speaking events or writing, to like try to diversify my skill set outside of what I could do within the constraints of a job. And now I feel even more motivated to do things like that, ultimately to help give back to the immigrant community, and maybe even start a business on the side and really kind of help continue the trail of work that I had started for the EB1A. So absolutely agree with you. Yes, at that point it seemed like getting the green card was the all and end all, but like now I feel like it's a whole new world of opportunities and a whole new future ahead.
I think you made a good point about like being able to experience the full measure of the American dream, right, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Where you can start a business on your own, or like even like have multiple jobs at the same time. I have a lot of people sort of being worried about this whole layoff situation, the COVID situation, the whole job market situation.
Absolutely.
Things like that. And this is like an additional layer of concern on top of what you're already going through, which is, hey, okay, yeah, I'm sort of God forbid something happens and then you're out of a job. Being out of a job is intense in itself, right?
Right.
But this layer on top of it of, oh, now I got to leave the country because the clock started ticking on me. That's a whole different ball game, and multiplies the stress, especially with people who have families and things like that. And I have many friends that have gone through this situation, firsthand.
Yeah, definitely. And not to like, I definitely want to like wear my mom hat here. And one thing that I know for a fact that I would have loved to do right when I was, right after having a baby was, have dedicated time to spend with her without having to worry about going back to work or like, reporting to a job, because I would otherwise like be, at the risk of losing the job or like going back to my country. And like, honestly, like, I think just the peace of mind of, being able to chart your own path and like be your own master, as opposed to being dictated by an external entity, whether it's the government or your 9-to-5 job or whatever that is. And I think I don't think anyone can put a price to that.
Yeah. This actually brings another question in my mind, which is we both have gone through our own EB1A paths under separate sort of life circumstances also, right? Like you said, you had a child when you were actually working towards this, right? And I have a lot of folks in the course who are at different ends of this whole family situation spectrum, where there are people who are more like how I was when I pursued my EB1A, which was like, I didn't have like any necessary big commitments. I didn't have a family, nothing like that. So I could like dedicate a lot of this time. But then I think, and then I get this question often that, hey, okay, like, but what about me with a child, or me, working my job in a very intense sort of work environment. By the way, I was in an extremely intense work environment when I pursued my EB1A, working around like I don't know, maybe a 12-hour day on average,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But your situation is more of like the family situation where you have like on top of all of that a kid to take care of.
Yeah.
So how do you think like that got managed well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, one of the things that I always say, whether it's your professional career or your personal career, is to start building a network of allies and a support system. I definitely talk more about that in the course, but one thing that truly helped me was having a really solid network of people I could leverage for help, whether it was in the EB1A argument development process or evidence development process, or having an additional set of hands at home to say, hey, I need to start, I need to work on a couple of things, and can you watch my child? And so I think one thing I'll also say is that if you truly set your mind to something, and if you truly like deeply want something, I think you and the universe will find a way to make that happen. And in my case, I can tell you for a fact that I think holds a lot of weight here too, where I was so defeated by this immigration process, and I was so frustrated with like almost 12 years of like battling this immigration system one way or the other that, I was like, I'm going to do this no matter what. Like, I'm going to do it no matter what it takes. And ultimately, I think me getting a green card was not just beneficial to me, but also my husband and my child also, obviously like while, she's naturalized by birth, like obviously she was going to benefit from having a set of parents who could do everything that they want to do to ensure a better future for her, right? And so I think my advice to anyone pursuing this path who might have a lot of other commitments is to really be sure why you're getting into this, and like be very build a strong conviction of like why you're pursuing this path in the first place, and how much you really want, and what are your reasons behind actually getting permanent residency. Like, is it just to escape the perils of like the immigration system, or is it to build a new future and like build your dreams, right? And so I think that conviction will really help drive your course and make you find the time to do this.
Yeah. So just an extension to what you said, right? Like you were talking about the aspects of being around your child, right? But it also I think extends beyond that, where your green card journey has been very quick because you went through the EB1A. But what that also means is like then you can spend like 5 years as a permanent resident and naturalize as a citizen, right? And then you can immediately sponsor your parents for a green card to come be here with you. And that's one of the things that a lot of my friends who go through this arduous journey also face difficulty in, like aging parents, not being able to be with them. You're not able to be with them because obviously you have your work and everything, but then they are not able to be with you because there's no path that way. My point is, like, even if you look at it from a family dimension, it kind of goes beyond just like just what is visible on the onset.
No, definitely. I mean, I can say this from the point of view of both me and my husband and I, both of us are only children. And obviously, like, it is very much our responsibility to take care of our parents when the time comes. I mean, yes, thankfully, they're hale and healthy now, and like they don't need like that day-to-day support. But one of the things that was always looming, in the back of our minds was that, okay, what's going to happen when, they're older and they're going to need the support, right? Obviously, like to your point, like, going to India or like going back to your home country was like constrained because you needed stamping and like all of these things, but also bringing your parents here was hard because there's no path for that as well. So absolutely, yeah, I think that's another very important reason and important ambition to have as part of like pursuing this path.
A lot of people actually ask me, and this is a quintessential question that I get, is what is the best time to start, right? And my usual answer is like, basically from my personal experiences, I wish there was like a resource, any resource, like not just my course, like any resource structure that really informs me and helps me way back, like even when I intended to move to the US. Yeah, I'm a student, but then like I gotta figure out all of these things that come in between. Having this as a having some sort of guidance from day one would have helped me leverage all the opportunities that I got from that day one till the day I even realized about the EB1A path, right? In effect, I feel like there was probably 2 years of my of my graduate studies plus maybe 4 years of my undergraduate studies. When I look back, I've been exposed to so many opportunities, be it like competitions or papers or like research opportunities, leveraging professors, leveraging internships, leveraging contacts in internships, all of these things that could have been really leveraged much better in terms of producing real world impact, which I just did not know of, because I did not know that there was something like this. When I faced the music and sort of came to know about this, then I had to look back and I'm like, man, I have actually let a lot of these opportunities go, not because I wanted to let it go, but I did not even know to recognize those opportunities to do to begin with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important call out. And I will say, like, I think thankfully for me, I don't know if it was just because like I spent my collegiate years here in the US, where I think a lot of like advocating for yourself, like trying to, network and find the right opportunities, like that is kind of inherently taught to you besides just getting a good GPA, that I think I already kind of built that muscle to like, really try to put myself out there outside of just doing the coursework and, getting through my exams, right? And so I think that mentality was very much there for me from the very beginning, where it almost felt like when I was putting the EB1A petition together, it almost felt like all of this was like sort of converging at this point, right? Where I felt really grateful that I was doing all the things that I did, whether it was putting myself out there to land a speaking gig or, trying to like, increase my visibility at work or whatever that is, where I think every little thing, every little extra step that I took in my career, I think really paid off when it came to like actually submitting the EB1A or preparing a really compelling case. So, I definitely like part of a lot of the contributions that I want to make in terms of educating the community is to, think about the intersection between the EB1A and your career progression. And honestly, like, I think a lot of things that you do for the EB1A will help you with your career as well. And so it's, I think, a really good idea to be very intentful about your the opportunities you pick and the decisions you make. To answer your very first question, which is like, is there a right time to start? I think now is the right time to start, right? Like, you can either organically build a career profile or like a resume, or you can build it very intentfully, keeping the EB1A as your end game, right?
Yeah.
And so I think either way is like, you still have to be very intentful about it.
Yeah, this is kind of a little cliche, because like every time someone asks me, hey, what's the best time to take this course, and when I say now, and take the course or take the program or not, right? Like, that's a separate question. The fact of the matter is, like, this really helps the whole overall development, the personality. Like, if you have the tenacity to like completely revamp your entire sort of profile to a way where you build it legitimately. It's not a shortcut. It's not just this like 5-month thing you do and then you forget about it. It's putting in that work to actually rise up to the top of a field that you're actually doing, and then get acclaim for that field and sustain that acclaim. The course, merely what it helps do is like break it down into very tactical steps that you can take in order to make that happen. But then overall, I mean, I get a lot of these questions. Is it shortcutting the process? It's not shortcutting. It's like, it takes work. I'm not like, I'll give you a green card tomorrow. That's not my claim. It does take work.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, this stuff is serious work. Like, I think, if anyone were to just do a LinkedIn search on EB1A profiles, like, I think you will, like, 99% of people who have gotten EB1 have actually done some serious good stuff to prove that they truly are, at the top of their field. Right. And I think there's some aspects of like how you might think creatively about positioning your field and like finding a niche and things like that, which obviously like your course talks more about. But, I think the great thing about the course is that it's really being a companion to anyone considering this path, where instead of blindly trying to do anything and everything that you think is going to help you with EB1, you're being very tactical and very intentful about doing the specific things that'll help build your profile for the end game of, ultimately building a compelling EB1A case. And so I think for me personally, like, I think not having a course like yours was a big drawback, because again, like, I was fortunate that I, was able to do a lot of the research on my own, but honestly it was a big struggle where, it's a lot of like, you kind of, being in a lot of self-doubt and second guessing everything. And so I definitely feel like, one, I think it's really important to really lay it out there that this is a serious path, and like it takes hard work, and you have to be prepared to do the hard work. And of course, like if you are already coming in with a decent profile, then maybe it's a couple more months of like refinement and really kind of putting it all together in a great package, versus like maybe if you come in with like very limited profile building, like then it's like maybe it's a longer route. Definitely it is a lot of work, and looking back, I think it took me like I think 9 months between getting into the process and like finally submitting my petition. And it's basically like having another baby, right? Like where you're literally like putting your heart and soul into this process. And so I think I would say like be prepared to have that grit and be prepared to have that expectation when you're coming into this process, and also of course taking the course.
So Anu, I'm actually super glad that you decided to mentor people through this course, and I think I'm really looking forward to a lot of people, right, who can resonate to your background, and even the intersection of our backgrounds, so to speak, to benefit from this course. So this is my goal. I want to basically put all the resources together to help everyone. So really happy that you're in fact, thank you so much for agreeing to like be on the course and help a lot of people through this.
No, absolutely, Simon, and it's an honor for me, truly, and I think this is a great way for me to give back to the immigrant community and help other people sort of pursue the same path. I have a question for you, actually. I'm curious as to why you've decided to add mentors to this program now versus like maybe in the earlier stages of your course.
This is something I thought about a lot, right? And I'm very, very careful about what I choose to do, because I want to see, even though like I can make a few claims, I want to see and test the fact that those claims are right, independently of if it was about me or not, right? And what that means is, yes, I put this course together from my own experience, kind of abstracting it a little bit, and then helping people through all the weekly coaching calls and stuff like that to basically tailor everything they learn in the course to their own profiles. The truth of the matter is that it still remained that, okay, this has worked for this guy, will it work for me? And that question is also reciprocal, where I'm like, okay, I put this course out, but then does it really work? Am I able to make it work for, help people in their journey? And I was waiting for that proof of truth to stand out, and it stood out when we had like a few approvals now, and this is the point when I'm like, okay, my story has been able to inspire, and my guidance has been able to help this set of people actually face get success. Now it's time for me to like increase because if I am just one person, right, and then imagine I have like more mentors in the course with diverse backgrounds,
right.
And I just looked at the potential impact that could have, and that was tremendous. I couldn't like envision the end of the impact that would have, and that's why I wanted to make sure that this thing works first of all, and then now that I know that thing works, now I want like more perspectives, more help, and for even as a platform for folks like you who have been successful, who want to give back. This is a platform where you can give it back in a way where it's also worth your time.
Definitely, absolutely. No, I think this is a really good way of thinking about the strategy and the roadmap for your course. And again, I'm really honored to be a part of it.
Same here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.